Alan here. I think I've come up with a new style or design of stove that I don't think anybody else has done. And if I'm not correct, please correct me. But I haven't seen anybody else do a video or anything on this. And I'm calling this stove the Percolator stove. And it works just like a coffee percolator, where the water starts heating and boiling up through the center tube, and then it starts dripping over the coffee grounds and then back down in the pot. And this stove pretty much works on the similar parameters of the function of it. And there's basically a aluminum tube that goes from the top here almost all the way down to the bottom. There's a little gap between the bottom that I've flattened out and where the tube stops. There's a little gap there. And then toward the top here, let me get this carbon filled out here, there is a shelf that I JB welded in, and then put JB weld around the aluminum tube. And then basically on the disc here, there's like little flaps that I've bent over, so it's like kind of looks like a bottle cap but flat. And I slipped that down inside this bottle, and I just JB welded it, and then I rolled the edge over. And then this allows me to change this carbon felt. If it ever shrinks to the point where I need to change it, I can basically pull it out and then just poke a new piece in there. And basically the bottom reservoir is where the fuel is, and that's separated by that little shelf there that the carbon felt sits on. And as the flame starts burning, it adds a vacuum effect. Plus, as everything heats up, it kind of makes the alcohol boil, and it starts coming up the tube and blurping out and keeping this carbon felt saturated. And you do not want to have the remote nipple too low, because what's going to happen is the fuel level in this reservoir is going to be maybe possibly higher than the vent hole, and that will cause your fuel in the remote to start coming out of your vent hole, which cause a lot of problems in a fire. So basically what I found for remote height is having, I'm using these nipple caps to show you, but basically it seems to work with them the same level, but I find it works the best just slightly above it, so it can still do its job. If you have it too low, it'll not function right and it'll starve the stove. And if you have it too high, then you have too much fuel that can cause it to backfeed and flood your vent on your remote. So basically this stove is not for the novice. It's definitely a real finicky stove, but the function is pretty cool idea that I've come up with. And I seem to find that it works best just slightly above. So let's say that's the stove, and the black one is the remote. You just want to have it just slightly above it, and you don't want to lift your remote too high to get the fuel flowing too long, or else you'll have too much in here that can cause that same problem. So the best thing is just let it naturally feed and fill up. And then when I think it's about time, I just basically put some alcohol on top to just get it going, and then that will start doing the effect of the percolator, and it'll stock the fuel up and then start keeping this wick wet. And it seems to be pretty efficient on fuel. And then any fuel that you don't burn that's in this reservoir, you can safely, if you want, tilt the stove sideways, take the fuel line off, and then put that back in your bottle, where you can feed it back into the remote safely at certain angles and stuff. But I find it's easier if you want to make sure the stove's cool, and then you just basically take your fuel line off at a slight angle, and then whatever's trapped in that reservoir, you can just basically pour it back into your fuel bottle and reuse it another time. And then you can burn off whatever's left in here, and then that will allow you to store this in different compartments or parts of your gear without getting your gear all saturated. And I'm going to stop the video here, get the stove and everything prepped up, and I'll be back in a second. Okay, I'm back. First, I want to make a quick note that this stove is a prototype, so please do not attempt to build this. There's still a few little bugs in it and some safety features I have to design into it when I make the next one to make it a little bit safer stove. So again, please do not attempt to build this. I just wanted to share my new stove design that I've come up with. And before I start, I want to show you a little picture diagram of kind of how it's designed. And basically this lower half is the fuel reservoir, and where these little X's are is the little shelf that I JB welded inside the can. And then I have this aluminum tube going all the way down to the bottom, and then there's a little gap from the bottom that I've flattened out between there so the fuel can flow in between and then up. And then on the top of the platform, I JB welded around the tube in there to make it sealed there, so there's a lot of JB weld, so that's like this part is sealed off from the bottom fuel reservoir. And then this top strip here is the one piece of carbon felt just sitting on top, and then this is where the can has been rolled over to kind of keep that carbon felt in there. And then you get the micro nipple there and a little flame. And probably the next one I build with the safety features, I think I'm gonna have to make this shelf a little bit lower so there's a little bit more room to maybe stick a second carbon felt piece in there. And then also, if it adds a little too much fuel to it, at least there's a little bit more cushion there, because having it too close to the top, if it does decide to do a little bit too much fuel, then you start having it maybe come over the edge and then down the side. So I gotta redesign that part, but I just wanted to play around with it to see if the function works, and it definitely does. I just gotta tweak some of that a little bit. And so now we're gonna fire it up here. And on this fire plug, in another video I showed you how I made my adjuster sleeve, and I have it already set that the nipple is just a tad bit higher than the one on the stove. So we're gonna flip this over, get the fuel going here, get the kinks out of the hose there, and then the fuel starting to flow in there. It's gonna fill up the stove a little bit, and I told you not to do this. I'm just doing this to make this video a little bit quicker, so I'm just going to lift my remote a little bit to kind of get that bottom filled up a little bit, make it a little bit quicker. Okay, I'm going to set it back down, and I have to maybe add a little bit to the top to get it going. Just a couple little bits there. Whoa! Like I said, this is a prototype, and that's where you want to make sure you're in an environment that nothing happens or you can cause damage to you or wherever you're working on. That's why they say to do these outside, but my little station, I'm in a pretty much safe area that I don't have that problem. I'll go ahead and turn the light off here. And it's starting to, a little bit. I probably should have put a little bit more alcohol in there. Let me blow it out and then add a little bit more. Okay, let's try this again. There we go. That's a little bit better on the amount of alcohol. And then as it heats up and the bottom fills up enough with time, it seemed like every few minutes the fuel would start coming up the little tube there. I'm using a little flashlight so I can watch it. The carbon felt is saturated right now, and then as that starts diminishing and things start heating up, I'll see the fuel starting to come up that little tube and replenish the carbon felt, and they'll just keep repeating that process until the remote is empty of fuel. And we'll just let it sit there, and it seems to have a pretty good flame. I just have to come up with a pot stand that works good with this stove once I get the final design made. And like I said, I find it works best to have that nipple at same height or just a tad bit higher. You don't want to have it too much, because as this heats up, it will percolate up here quite often. If you have it too high, it'll do too much, and then this will get too saturated, and then maybe cause it to flood it and then start going over the side. We'll just let it sit here and watch it. I'll let you know when it starts coming up the tube and replenishing the carbon felt, and then the remote just keeps bubbling away as needed. Keep that fuel level in the bottom reservoir just right, but the whole function is that the vacuum from the flame and the heat will just make it come up that little tube and percolate onto the carbon felt. So I'll just sit here and wait a little bit, and when you start hearing it sizzling, that means that it's come up the tube and it's replenishing the felt. Okay, there it is. It's starting to come up the top of the little aluminum tube, and it's starting to pour out onto the carbon felt and get that saturated. And when that's saturated, the fuel will start going down the tube again, and hold off for a second until it needs it again. Yep, there it went back down the tube. So now the fuel dropped down through the tube, and then the carbon felt's all saturated. And then when that it'll burn like that for a while until it gets dry, and it'll start sucking more up the tube. Just keep repeating it. Yep, the fuel level went way down in the tube. And that's pretty much how this particular stove works. It's kind of cool. And if you have any questions or comments, please post them. If you like this video, click the like button, and I'll try to answer the questions or comments as soon as I possibly can. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. One last thing is, when you're done burning and not wanting to use the stove anymore, go ahead and flip the remote on its side right away and then blow it out. Because if you blow it out and let the remote sit there, it'll feed up the reservoir again. That the next time, if you decide to, like, maybe a matter of minutes after you want to cook something else, there might be a little too much alcohol and it'll blurp out on the carbon felt and saturate it too much. So I recommend, once I get the final one done with the safety stuff built in, to first blow the stove out, or I mean, excuse me, flip the remote down, then blow the stove out, that it should not have that issue with that safety built into it once I redesign it. See, right now it's filling up the carbon felt again. And then pretty soon that fuel will start dropping down that tube. There it goes. It's starting to... Yep, there it went down. So now the carbon felt's all saturated again. It'll burn like that. And just, like I said, it'll keep doing that. So that should be it with this video. I'll catch you guys another time. Again, hope you enjoyed. Catch you guys again.